Guys, what's up? Episode 10, Barbecue with Birks. This is the final episode of season 1. Thanks guys for sticking around. Thanks for checking it out. We're going to do something real special. We are going to do a brisket on the smoker for episode 10. I know everybody's waiting all season for it. I'm going to tell you the do's and don'ts to make it turn out great without a lot of effort and without having to waste a lot of time. And in good old-fashioned Birk fashion, we are going to do it with some whiskey. We're going to season this up tonight, and then we're going to throw it on the smoker, get that guy ready, and then we'll give you some facts throughout the day as we're cooking it. So the night before you always want to season, or even the day before you want to season your brisket. You don't need to put any sauce on it. Put a good dry rub on it and let that sit in with the meat overnight. So I'm going to put the spice rub on this guy, and by absolutely no means am I ever going to tell you guys my secret spice recipe for what to put on this brisket.
Okay, did I get everything? Salt, yeah. Pepper, yeah. Red chili flakes, yeah. Montreal steak spice, yeah. Paprika, yeah. Cayenne, yeah. Okay, I think I got everything in the secret spice. Now, just make sure I don't tell anybody.
So we've got ourselves a little brisket here. It's about 4.5, 5 pounds. A brisket point. There's a difference between a point and a plate. The plate usually continues a little longer, and it's a flatter piece, but it's more fatty. So a lot of people tend to end up cooking a brisket point. It's a little bit more uneven, but you have a lot more meat to it, and there's a nice fat cap on it, so you can really kind of control how much meat and how much fat you're going to get out of the slices here. So what I've done is I've just trimmed this up real nice here on both sides, left a little bit of the fat. You don't want your brisket to dry out, especially the fact that you're cooking it for so long. If you take all the fat off, it ends up becoming real tough, and it won't hold the moisture in it if you take all the fat out. Okay guys, our brisket's all seasoned up, ready to go into the fridge tonight, and then we're gonna pop this guy on bright and early. All right, good morning everyone. We're up nice and early. It's just before 6 o'clock here. The sun's already up, so we're getting a late start today. Just getting the fire going here. Again, you want to make sure it's nice and hot, get all those charcoal nice and gray and ashy, and that's when you know you're ready to go. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the temperature this morning up to about 180 degrees Fahrenheit, and then we're going to put the brisket on at that temperature. The reason why we're going to start so low is because we want to do a couple hours of just a low smoke. Now what that's going to do is it's going to start your smoke ring on your brisket. If you start too hot, it'll end up cooking it, and you won't be able to get that smoke, that good smoke flavor and that penetration. We're not going to wrap it right away this morning, and we're not going to put any marinade on it. You just want to put the brisket on the grill. We're going to get the brisket on here. Ask whether you're going to do fat side up or fat side down. And really it's dependent on your smoker or what you're cooking it on, because your fat is going to act as almost a heat shield. So if you put it on the bottom, the meat itself isn't going to cook right away. That fat will start to cook and render a little bit before it gets to the meat. If you put it on the top, that meat will start cooking sooner, and the fat will render down into it. So what I like to do is, while I'm on this low temperature at about 180 to get that smoke ring, I like putting the fat side down. What that's going to do is ensure that your meat's not going to start cooking too much while your initial smoke is happening, and then later on I flip it. So what the flipping does is it makes sure that you're going to have even cooking over the whole thing. All right, so we're going to get this guy on fat side down. So the reason why you don't want to add any moisture is because you want that seasoning to create a crust. What that's going to do is it's going to give you that nice bark on the outside, that nice bite when you cut into it. All right, so when we start this initial cook, I like to make sure that my vent is open most of the way. That way you can get some good airflow going in there. And then the vent at the top, I don't have open for too much or too long. I really want just a little sliver. You really want all that smoke flavor sitting in there and penetrating through that meat. But if you don't have any gap at all, what happens is the smoke ends up getting stale and stagnant in there, and you need to cycle through that. All right, guys, we're at about the 3-hour mark here. You can see there's some not too much heat. but that real good smoky flavor is getting and penetrating through that meat here. Kind of close to halfway. This is about a 4.5, 5-pound brisket. Usually what you want to account for is between 90 minutes, so hour and a half, to 2 hours per pound on your brisket. Now that depends on how hot you're cooking it, how thick it is. There's a lot of different variants. So if you have an extremely thick piece of meat, it's probably going to take closer to the 2-hour mark. If it's a little thinner, like this one's, about 90 minutes per pound. And it also depends on the heat you cook it at. Now when we go for the smoke for the first couple of hours at about 180, you're going to need to tack on a little extra time. The 90-minute mark per pound is usually between 225 and 250 degrees. So what we've done is we've allowed a lot of smoke to penetrate through it. Some of it's coming out, so we're constantly refreshing. And now we're going to increase the heat. We want to get to about 225 as a consistent temperature to cook for the rest of the time here. For the next 3.5, 4 hours. Now with a brisket, you want the internal temperature of about 200, 202 degrees. Now I know that's very specific, but the reason behind this is because you want all that fat inside to render and become part of that meat. Now on beef, you normally don't want to cook to that high of an internal temperature, but because of those reasons, that's why we're doing it with the brisket here. At about 165 degrees Fahrenheit, we're gonna wrap it and we're gonna flip it so that the fat is on top. So another step of ensuring that your brisket is nice and moist is what the professionals do, what's called spritzing or spraying it. Now usually what they do is they use a apple cider vinegar and they put it in a spray bottle and they'll spray it every hour or every 45 minutes, depending on how long they're going for. Now what this does is it adds moisture and a little bit of flavor and acidity to help break down the muscle fibers and add some taste as well. So what we're going to do is, if you don't have a spray bottle, I'll show you guys what you can do at home. Just get yourself like a little jar and you're just going to put it in, and then we'll ladle it on with a spoon. Now again, when you wrap it, you're going to want to add that moisture inside the tin foil to help keep that going, because you're not going to be able to spray it while it's in the tin foil. Little apple cider. Tennessee Fire whiskey. Now the reason I'm doing this is 1, for flavor, 2, for fun. So I want about equal parts. Close that lid up. Give it a little shake. Perfect. So now you've got yourself a good mixture that you're going to ladle on top of your brisket. Keep this going probably every hour. You want to turn this dial open just a little bit more to allow some of that smoke to come out. We're more so going to start cooking it as opposed to just trying to get some smoke onto it. And you really, as that heat comes in, you don't want to trap too much heat or you'll overcook it and it'll be too hot. Alright guys, we're about halfway here. We're sitting just under the 165 mark. So before I wrap it, what I want to do is I want to flip it on that grill. At around 165, you're going to hit what they call the bubble. But what happens is it hits that certain temperature and it's very hard for that the internal heat of that brisket to pop through that bubble. What you need to do is flip it, get that fat on the top side instead of on the bottom, and increase your heat just a little bit. And what that'll do is that'll end up cooking that tough part that it has a hard point breaking past. And once you break past that bubble, sky's the limit, smooth sailing the rest of the way, and you'll get up to that internal temperature you're looking for, about 165. That's when I'm going to wrap it in 2 layers of tin foil. You can use peach paper if you have peach paper. That way it can keep that moisture sucked in with it as well and cooking for the rest of the way. Alright guys, so we're about the 165 mark here. It's smoking nice and good. Good color, good temperature. Charcoals are still going nice and hot. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull it off, put it in that tin foil, put the rest of our liquid in with that. Then I'm going to double layer that tin foil. The reason why is because you don't want any of that moisture or any of that heat to leave the tin foil. You get a nice good seal, a good wrap on it. It keeps all that moisture locked inside, and it'll help pop through that bubble and get you to the 202 or 200 internal temperature mark. All right guys, so it is about just after 1 in the afternoon here, which means time for a beer. We are finally past that bubble. We hit the 180 mark. We are about 185 here. Sitting around 7 hours. We said it was probably about 7.5 hours for this thing to finally cook. Unfortunately, get through that bubble, you got to get that temperature up, and it just takes a little while. It'll sit there, and then pop. It'll go through that sealant, and it'll be good to go. So now we got about 10 more degrees. We want to get to about 195 before we pull this off. Don't go to 200 on the grill, because if you go to 200, when it pulls off, you want to rest for about an hour, and it'll go over that, and you'll end up getting a dry brisket. So what we're going to do is about 195, 10 more degrees, and then we'll pull that off, sit it on the counter, let it rest for an hour. We're going to put these on a sandwich with a little bit of barbecue sauce and some coleslaw, and we're going to have a good day out in the sunshine here. So thanks, guys. Cheers. Here's the last 10. All right, guys, we hit 195 here. What we want to do is we want to pull it off now. So this guy comes off. You're gonna let it rest for at least an hour. All right, guys, it's been a couple hours. We've let this cool in the fridge there. We're gonna unwrap it and we're gonna slice it. Beautiful. Beautiful. So you can see there's this nice smoke ring around it. That smoke ring, that's what you're looking for. Now on a bigger brisket, you're gonna smoke it for a lot longer, so there could be a bigger smoke ring, or if you leave it at a lower temperature for longer, that's what's gonna help develop the smoke ring. So the smoke ring, if you don't get it, what the reason is because your humidity. You want high humidity to be able to get that nice smoke ring. It has to do with the myoglobin, which is binding chemical in the muscle that binds iron and oxygen with it. And if your humidity is too low, like it's too dry in there, it's not going to do that. As well as if you get over 180 degrees, it won't adhere to the meat. It's just not possible. That's why we keep that low temperature for the first couple hours, because the meat won't allow any of that smoke penetration at too high of a heat. This is also why we don't coat it with sauces, is because it won't make it through the sauce to penetrate into the meat. It just needs to be that plain surface with a little spice rub. All right, guys, that's gonna be it for Barbecue with Birk this season. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I'm gonna enjoy this delicious brisket on some sandwiches with some coleslaw. I'll give you guys a bit of a review later in the week. Check back in, let me know the things you liked this season and you didn't like. If you haven't seen all the episodes, they're up on my IGTV and on my YouTube, Big Birk, 2 words. Thanks for sticking around, guys. Looking forward to kicking this off next year. For now, we're gonna say goodbye. Thank you very much. I'm gonna go work on the shop and get prepped for hunting season coming up soon. All right, thanks, guys. See you later, and always have fun grilling. And now you have a couple of tips that make you king of the queue.